the truth of the matter is I don't know what the person's intent was, right? All I know is that this is the end result. My life forever changed.
Yeah, actually, can I ask you a question, man?
Mm.
It's a hot mic, by the way, just so you
Oh,
know.
okay.
Who's that right there? Is that someone you know?
So, yeah, her name was Lynn, and she was passing away from cancer.
Okay.
So one of my cousins asked if I could. They were having a celebration for her, and asked if I can come in and take photos. And so I drove to Atlantic City and took photos of her.
Whoa. How long after? Do you know?
Uh, I want to say it was 6 months to a year, but I can't recall right off the
Okay.
top. It's been a number of years now.
Man, amazing photo.
Thank you.
What is it? Like, how? So say if I were to just snap a picture myself of this person sitting here, I don't believe it would look like that. What is it about your photo that, pulls this out of it?
Um, I think for me personally, I try my best to look for moments, and I think that's the the important thing is always looking for the moment. And when it presents itself, you kind of know it. And sometimes you take 1,000 shots to get one, and that's okay as long as you catch that moment.
Yeah.
You know, but you feel it. And the situation in relations to that particular photo, it's already an emotionally charged situation. In a lot of ways. I mean, and she did well. I mean, she was in a lot of pain. Even touching her, she was in pain, but she smiled as much as she could. And she was wonderful, to me under the circumstances. So it's made me, it makes you appreciate the struggle that people have and living even against the odds, and when your time is limited.
Yeah. You say that when your portraits, you like them to tell a story. That picture right there, what story do you feel like that told?
Um, I think it tells the story of a village surrounding someone that they know may not see another birthday, and letting them know in real time how much they're valued, how much they're loved and appreciated. And we all don't get that for people, because none of us are promised tomorrow. So I think that's what tells you. It tells you that people are surrounded by love, and it tells you that this woman was loved, very much so loved. And she smiled even through the pain.
Yeah. Now that's interesting, knowing the backstory behind it, because looking at the pictures, you definitely feel that for sure, like 1,000%. So now you just connect and it's like, oh, okay. But you don't know. There's no context until you get the story from you. But yeah, you definitely
Yeah.
could feel that through that.
It's funny because, when I have conversations and we talk about things, like context matters. And far too many times people don't put context to a lot of things, and you're left to kind of speculate. And there was a point in time where, a photographer buddy of mine, we had a conversation in relations to photos and whether or not did the image tell the story, or, another, in the sense of, does the image make the story, or does the story make the image? And you kind of figure out where that kind of lies at, and that's where that context comes in. Sometimes you can get everything just by looking at the image. And sometimes personally, I personally enjoy the idea of people looking at certain types of images and coming up with stories themselves, because it helps you engage into the vision that you see. And then there's times where you do need a little help to understand the impact of what you're seeing, and I think that's okay too. I'm very I skate the fence in the very much a lot.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
I like that. So let me introduce you real quick. Thanks for sharing
yeah, no
all that.
problem.
So today is episode 46, I believe. Welcome back to the Awaken the Wind. Today we bring to you another deposit on the journey towards generational health. Today we have Mr. Jaleel King, street photographer, gun violence survivor, award winner,
Yeah.
Mr. Jaleel King.
Hello.
How are you, sir?
I'm good.
How are you?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming in. I appreciate you coming in on a Sunday during the Eagles game.
Gotta wrap this up, baby.
Yeah, right. Get you in and out. Now I appreciate it.
No,
Those
it's
are
all
the
good.
subliminal thoughts.
No.
Yeah, so thanks so much for coming in. I reached out to you via same way I reach out to everyone, and I would say our go-between us. He wasn't even go-between, but the person that we knew in common is Mike Alabak.
Yep.
Mike Alabak, and he didn't tell me anything about your story or anything like that. So basically, I'll just reiterate the point that I made earlier. I reached out to you because I saw you had liked one of his photos or clips that I had put out, and then I just looked through some of your work, and then I was really captivated by some of the photos that you had taken, and because I'm not an artist myself, I just have so many questions. I just wonder how someone can take such a amazing photo. You know, like I was saying before, we all can pick up a camera and take pictures, but we're probably not all gonna express it the way that you've been able to express some of your photos, at least not early in our journey. So you just take some amazing photos, and I wanted to get some more information about how you got to that point. And I didn't know that you were, a gun violence survivor. So
Yeah.
if you don't mind sharing some of that story, we'd
Yeah, I
we'd
appreciate
appreciate
it.
that. So question being, let's start from the beginning, if you don't mind. Where were you born at?
Born in Philly,
Okay.
mostly raised in Philly. Had a short stint living outside of Philly when I was in foster care, but for the most part, Philly, born and raised.
Okay. That's what's up. Around what area? Specific.
So I grew up mostly in South Philly, Southwest Philly, and then I lived in upstate PA for a bit.
Okay. That's what's up.
Yeah.
My grandma was lived in Southwest Philly, like 52nd and Windsor when I was a kid. I
Okay.
used to be down there. I guess it's not too far from Woodland Ave, like Kim
No.
Pleasant Pool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I didn't live too far from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's up. So I guess if you don't mind, if you want to jump right into it, what was the incident that led to you being wheelchair bound?
So when I was 8 years old, was watching me and my cousin went and bought some firecrackers. Just got off of punishment. I was a very adventurous kid. And we had went and bought some firecrackers, and an adult was lighting the firecrackers for us. Person who lived next door, for whatever reason, decided that it was a good idea to come outside with a sawed-off shotgun. I thought I was running one way, and I guess I was running a different direction. And last thing I heard was a shot go off, and myself scream and woke up in a hospital, paralyzed. This is the gist of what I know.
Yeah. I heard you speak on that through some of your interviews. We're going to jump all around. Hopefully you don't mind, because just like
Yeah,
a
no, it's
regular
okay.
conversation, no real structure. But I heard you speak about finding, this is probably an ending point, but I'm going to ask you now because it's on my mind. I heard you speak about finding forgiveness. So we're like skipping through your whole journey. And
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, like, how does one, like, what was that like? How does one come to that juncture?
I don't know is the easiest answer that I can give, right? Because at the end of the day, the truth of the matter is I don't know what the person's intent was, right? All I know is that this is the end result. My life forever changed. We make our mistakes early and we learn from them and we keep it moving.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
There's no hope. I mean, I kind of like, I think that's one of the things that I think that was one of the things that I've always been afraid of is making mistakes. But we have to make those mistakes in order to learn from them. And if we don't make those mistakes, how do we learn how to do things right or to be better at some of those things that we've made mistakes from? And it's always been this thing that I think has always kind of been a cloud over my head because a mistake for me is different than a mistake for some other people. And so I've always feared making these mistakes and I've always tried to live my life a certain way. And I think it's been a detriment to me not being open to making a mistake so that I can learn from them.
Mm.
And it's not to say I haven't done that, but I've been so particular about trying to be this ideal thing that it's almost impossible for any one person. You know, I thought that one day I would want to be a president, you know, be president of the United States, you know, and at the time I thought it was a fantasy, you know what I mean? But I try to live my life a certain way so that, you know, there was nothing in my background that could ever be used against me.
Mm.
But the reality of it is we all have skeletons. Everybody has a skeleton.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody is like this pious person. And so it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to acknowledge that you've made a mistake. It's okay to say I've changed. When you say or do something that's counter to who you are, you should be always open and willing to want to grow from a point to be a different person. What I did 2-3 years ago, I might not still be that person. And I like to hope to think that I'm a better person because some of the things that I've done and from some of the mistakes that I've made. So yeah, it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, right? Because since we're talking about mistakes, the reason why I actually have that shotgun mic is because I realized that I need like a secondary source of audio
Yeah.
because I've lost the primary source and the camera's audio is, you know, terrible.
Yeah.
So that was through a mistake. So you're absolutely correct. It's just interesting when you're in it. Hindsight, you know, you look back on it and you're like, okay, you know, I'm appreciative of that moment. But in that moment, sometimes it's hard to be appreciative,
Oh, hell
which
yeah.
speaks to the idea of trying to be present, you know, to really be present as often as you can so you can really appreciate all moments, you know, good, bad, indifferent, whatever.
Absolutely. And you know, like I said, a mistake is an opportunity to learn. And if you haven't learned, then it continues to be what it is. You know, and I don't know how many times, you know, some people like to touch the third rail, you know what I mean? They got to fix for that electricity of always getting burnt. You know, I don't.
Yeah.
At least I like to hope not, you know.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that it's not fun on occasions.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I appreciate your support. Right now, in real time, you just supported me. So thank you very much, man.
Yeah, no
Cool dude.
problem.
So you were speaking about your experience with the incident with the person that
Yeah.
was responsible for.
You know what I mean? It's the whole idea of finding, you know, finding forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
I think that like, I think that you know, I had a lot of amazing people in my life that
Mm-hmm.
made things infinitely better for me. Not necessarily easier, and in some cases easier, but better. Where if I didn't have these folks in my life, I don't know what kind of person I would be. And so it made things easier by not always being reminded of my circumstances. Now, that's not to say I didn't have people who went out their way to tell me that's why you're in a wheelchair. They say some really off mark, you know, BS to me. But I had a lot more positive in my life than negative. And what's crazy is like when I got shot, the man who shot me would come and visit me in the hospital. You know what I mean? So I guess in that way, it made things a little easier. But I mean, you're talking to an 8-year-old kid at the time. 8-year-old kid wasn't into girls at the time. 8-year-old kid wasn't into doing, you know, looking for work. 8-year-old kid didn't have to worry about so many things that a teenager now has to worry about, or a young man has to worry about, or a man has to worry about. But I'm grateful that I was able to figure out that, like, you know, it's not really forgiving for the sake of forgiving. Sometimes you got to forgive for the sake of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that you can move past it. Because if I carried that anger and that bitterness around, you know, who would want to be around you? Who would want to do for you? Who would want to be there for you? Why would you want to make things more difficult? And it doesn't mean that I don't have certain tendencies because of the things that I've been raised with. You know what I mean? I'm overly cautious sometimes. Sometimes I look at things and I take a negative spin out of abundance of caution because I'm worried about something coming in and pulling a rug from underneath me at times because it's happened. You know, because at the time I'm on a lower social economic situation. I'm always fighting an uphill battle for every little thing that I had. And so like even being aware of those things like takes work. And so like going back to the forgiveness thing, I had an incident with a SEPTA bus, which is my life because that was my way of getting around before I learned how to drive. And I ended up having to go to the hospital. And on this one occasion, the man who shot me was there. And my mom found him and came and dragged him. And, she was just like, look at what you've done. Look at you, look at you, look at what you've done. And it's like, I'm never going to forget that. And, just to see her pain. And it's just like, I'm here. But, they try to, remove her, escort my mom out because she was just so upset. And, he just put his hands in his head and was just like, he tried to say something. He just couldn't. He just, I'm so sorry. That doesn't take away from the idea and the concept that he still got to live his life, whatever that looks like for him. I don't know whether it's good. I don't know whether it's bad, but he got to live a life in a way that I never got the chance to. I've got barriers at damn near every juncture in my life that he will never have to deal with. He has children. I don't have any children. I may never have children. It's difficult for me to find relationships. He may not have that. So all these things are taken away from me. And it's not that what can I really do? Be angry and bitter about it? I thought more of my mom and what she went through. And the crazy thing about it is like, it's all these things that she had hopes and dreams of having for me that were taken from her as well. People fail to realize that when things happen to people or when things are done to people that are bad and wrong, it doesn't just affect the person, it affects everybody who loves that person. It's like an orbit. And the minute you take that one thing away, it disrupts the whole solar system, rightfully or wrongfully, and that's what I had to, deal with. And it doesn't mean that, I still don't think about those things. I don't have my moments and my days, but the reality of it is what am I supposed to do? You know, sit here, woe is me all the time. I mean, we all have our moments. I just can't wallow in them. I've got these annoying things called friends and family in my life. So,
Yeah.
they won't let me, they won't let me down for long. And then, once in a while, I'll get an email from somebody who happened to have come across my story. And they get inspired and then they reach out and, so I enjoy having people do those types of things, reaching out, letting me know how, I've influenced in a positive way their life, or, brought some type of, calmness or taking some of the pressures and weight off of some of the uncertainty that goes about when you're living a life with a disability. And it's not to say that I've figured it out by no stretch of the imagination. It's just I just keep moving forward.
Yeah, because you literally have no choice.
No choice.
Yeah, I would say you inspire me. I forgot that this part of it too, another piece of it. So let me preface by saying, relatively speaking, our worst day is our worst day. So when I say I know what it's like, I don't mean literally I know what it's like to be wheelchair bound, but I do know what my worst day was in comparison. And I was in a motorcycle accident, so my right arm partially paralyzed, nerve damage to my brachioradialis, and I could have been in the same situation as you, been or worse, dead. So when I see you and I just see you be happy and moving, I'm like, yeah, it's motivational and it's inspiring because you realize like, things can always be worse.
It can be. I mean, and like I said, it doesn't mean that I don't go through things. I just do a better job at controlling those things. If I'm being honest, there's a lot more times that I'm lonely than I care to admit. Even, you go through this motion and this feeling where even when you have people around you, you still feel alone sometimes. And living with a disability can be lonely for some people. I can't imagine how many people who are out here who have a disability who feel as though that, no one will ever love them. They're virtual prisoners in their homes because of accessibility issues. for a number of reasons, not even just accessibility issues, just even transportation. It's a lot of things that just could be different, and so I fight the good fight as much as possible because, like I said, tomorrow's not promised. But for everything I have gone through, in all honesty, everything I've gone through, I've lived a pretty good life, all things said. Now, are there some things I wish were better? Obviously, we all can kind of say that. But for what it's worth, there's so many amazing people that I got to meet that I never would have met. I don't even know who I would have been but for the fact of being in this situation. And I've got to travel to places that I only imagined I would ever be. So, in some ways I'm grateful. So there's that balance that you find with that forgiveness aspect of it, because it's like, it's not all bad, what I mean? But there's some things that I would have liked. I would have liked to have had a child. I would have liked to have, been in a meaningful relationship, you know what I mean, at this current time of my life. I don't know whether any of those things are ever going to be in the cards for me at this stage. But then there's these things that remind me, like I said, it's the nature of the highs and lows, that, the yin and yang of life. I lost my mom, the beginning of this year.
Okay, sorry for your loss.
Thank you. She fought cancer and beat it the first time. The second time, it took her. And, part of the hard part was, my mom's house is not accessible by any stretch of the imagination, which always kind of annoyed me. But it's that moment, it's those types of moments that kind of remind me of being in a wheelchair, of having a disability, because I felt as though I couldn't be there the way I wanted to be there for my mom. And there's a difference when you're in those kinds of situations, because I was there, but I felt like I could do more if only I wasn't in this damn wheelchair. If only. But again, you have to realize, would I still be the same person? Would things be different? What if I wasn't in this situation and I live, on the other side of the country or in another country? Would that still be the same difference? And I don't know, but it doesn't take away from the idea that, damn it, I couldn't just go into my mom's house. I had to get help. When my mom needed me, I just couldn't do X, Y, or Z sometimes. But it doesn't mean I never showed up. It doesn't mean that I didn't do what I was supposed to do. I relied on my sister to do some things. I relied on other family members and friends to help me out with things. The hard part, is this notion that we feel as though we have to do everything on our own. Otherwise, it doesn't have any merit. And that's just a lie. We have to be able to rely on our village. We have to be able to be there for each other in order for us to all grow and lift each other up. Because what's the point of it all? We can all just be in our houses and not do anything, and then nothing changes. We don't grow. We don't learn anything new. We don't know joy. We don't know sadness. We don't know any of the good things that come out of life. And so, it doesn't take away from the way I feel internally. Even if I'm telling myself a lie that, I could have done more. I did a lot, and I did a lot more even when she was alive. You know what I mean? But it's those moments that add the weight of my disability. And those are the moments where I'm ready to curse somebody out. I'm ready to go find somebody and do something.
Yeah, the kind of why me
Yeah.
moments.
It's the why me moment, for that reason. And I mean, and truthfully, maybe some things would have changed had I moved out of Philly. I don't know. But those types of things become much more difficult when you're living with a disability. It's not impossible, but it becomes a lot more difficult.
Yeah. It's interesting the profound impact that these traumatic events have on our life, and sometimes how these traumatic events have, positively affected us, which you attest to by saying that you don't know who you would have become. Because I often wonder myself, like, if I could have had this thing not happen to me, would I? And I don't really know. I'm not undecided. And I'll ask you that question the same too. And your answer might be different because, you know, it's magnified. But I don't know if I become who I become without the trials and tribulations that I had to overcome to get here. So I really don't know.
No,
You know how you feel about that?
no, I already know that I I already know there's a lot of things I would not have done or I would have done so completely different that it wouldn't have had the same impact.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I use a wheelchair to get around. And there's always these places that I wish I could go.
Mm-hmm.
And then the question I'm asking myself, because one day me and Mike were together and we were coming from the art museum and he was pushing me and seen this like little pathway. It, wasn't the best pathway.
Mm-hmm.
And we were having this conversation about these things. And this is like, damn it, sometimes if I wasn't in this wheelchair, man, I would. But then I had to say to myself, like, wait, would I really still care about that pathway? But for the fact of me having a challenge to do it. There's a lot of things you often take for granted that you ask yourself, would I do that if it wasn't this? I enjoy fishing. I suck at it. I absolutely suck at fishing, but I enjoy fishing. It is difficult for me to do fishing because I can't get to every location.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that I can't find a location, but it's become difficult. Now, that may be something I could say that if I was walking, I probably would be doing a lot more of
Yeah.
because I wouldn't have those barriers to entry, to do those things. But there's a lot of things that we often don't do without realizing that, like, yo, you can still do those things.
Yeah.
One of my most triumphant moments was, when I was in foster care, lived in upstate Pennsylvania, and outside the foster home that I was at, there was a tree, and that was the first time I climbed a tree since becoming, becoming disabled. And that was a triumph for me, to find those things. But then I'm asking myself, well, how many more trees do I really want to climb at this stage? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you in your circumstances shouldn't climb that tree because you can. It's not a matter of whether you want to, it's you can. And sometimes doing what you can opens your mind to other things that make things, possible. I can't enjoy the beach the same way you can enjoy the beach. So why don't you enjoy the beach? It's these little things that I think we often take for granted, in life. We're still here. You can have these conversations. And there's a lot of times when we hold on things that we should not be holding on to. I get online, I watch these YouTube videos. And the other day I wrote out like a whole sentence about what was being talked about in the video, and then I deleted it. And as I'm listening to the video, I wrote another one and I deleted it. And I realized it's like, how much do I really care?
Yeah.
It's like I care, but I don't care enough to kind of like make it a thing. And I think some things we ought to care about more, and there's some things we should care less about.
Yeah, I agree for sure.
So,
I used to have these dreams after my accident, and this is the craziest dream, super vivid too, because there's a thing, people, I think they have this misconception about what muscle memory is. They think that your muscles have this memory of things, and that's why you can repeat these actions, but that's really not how it works. It's really these deep developed neural pathways that are in your brain. So it's kind of like the phantom limb thing where your brain has a signal because it has the stored information. So it will send it there, but where it's going just may not respond. So I used to have this is a long way of telling you, I used to have dreams about doing a finger roll, just like running and just laying up ever so gracefully a basket with my right hand forever, and then eventually over time it just faded. And as the dream faded, my ability to even execute this move was just gone. It was just like, it was never just the information that was downloaded had been erased from my hard drive forever. So I wanted to ask you, a long way of asking you, like, do you have memories of your prior existence?
not so much anymore. I mean, I was a kid,
Okay.
so there's some things that I can remember, but like, the aspect of being able to walk and things like that. I guess in some light, I do still have dreams, but not quite. You know what I mean? It's like, I think I get hyper competitive, so I do game.
What do you play?
I used to play Call of Duty heavy now.
Yeah, I love Call of Duty back
Yeah, I
in the
know
day.
it sucks so much now.
Oh, does it?
Oh yeah, it's so bad.
Oh, brutal.
So bad. And it maybe just not, it's not my game anymore. Maybe that's just what it is.
Modern Warfare was my shit.
Modern Warfare
Yeah.
2
Yeah, yeah, that's
my
the one
jam.
right there. That's the
Yeah, I
one.
met some amazing people playing video
Uh,
games, man. And it's like I joke around, but it's true to a degree that like I get competitive in games and I and I gamed a lot. I mean, I gamed a lot. Years ago I would
Good
game
for
a
you.
lot.
Good for you.
But it also made me feel like, do I game because it's like the only time I really get to walk? I get to do things that I never would, that I can't do anymore.
Mm,
Subconsciously, and I kind of joked about it
mm.
before, and it's like, nah, maybe there's some truth to this.
Yeah, I can see that's interesting.
Because the controller's in my hand, no one really knows, you know, what I really am, and so I game, and it's a time where, I'm on an equal footing in relations to competitiveness and relations to just enjoying myself without having to worry about anything. That is until they see my gamer tag, which is wheelchair bully. So, and
Okay.
the cool thing about it is people's like, do you bully people in wheelchairs or are you a bully in a wheelchair? Yeah,
Mm.
take your pick.
Either or.
Either
Yeah.
or.
I like that. That's interesting. The way you just described what you really are, that's like an interesting way to perceive yourself, just even the way you described it. I have a brother that was born with cerebral palsy. So for me, I've always had empathy to all people. It's just, innately just with me. And because of that, I never really see anyone as any different. Like some people are capable of doing this. This guy's 6 foot, 7 foot. The range of difference in people is just, you know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
just how I see it personally. So I wanted to ask you this thing. I also saw you speak about how you wanted to eventually photograph with the person who was the cause. Did you ever get to have that experience?
No.
No?
So I don't have first, I don't have a way of getting in touch with him.
Okay.
My grandmother, I think, knew his mom
Hmm.
or something like that. Now she's got dementia. So that's kind of
Okay.
well, I don't even know whether he still lives in Philly. It's something I still would be very much so open to doing.
Hmm.
I still want to do. Like I said, there's conflicts still mentally. There's still conflicts.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like, there's because stuff was still stolen from me.
Hmm.
And I suffered through things that through no fault of my own, and I'm still dealing with stuff. When I need to get a new wheelchair and I'm fighting with insurance again, and it's just like, this is my lifeblood. This is how I get around, you know, everything is still very much so a fight, but I feel as though, like I said, I want to do it for me, not for him. And, like I said, it may be a little selfish, and it's okay to be a little selfish on occasions. But I still want to do it. I'm still open to doing it.
Yeah. What about what have you ever thought of having a conversation, or are you just interested in the photography? Like, would you sit down and exchange, or you just want
I
to do a shoot?
I wouldn't mind the exchange either. What I mean? It's kind of funny because it's like he's run into me a couple of times, even leading up to and it just always caught me in a good moment, not in a moment where I'm like lashing out or I'm upset because somebody denied me something. The bus driver denied me entrance on a bad day. Somebody made things more difficult for me on a bad. You know what I mean? It's just like it helps when your life is when you have a little bit more positivity in your life. Like I said, I've had amazing people in my life that just wouldn't let me wallow. And so this is why I try to tell people, don't wallow. I get it. But you can't wallow for long. Like, wallow enough. It's okay. What happened to you is what happened to you. Trying to play the game of who had it worse doesn't really make anything any better. Yes, it could always be worse. It's the idea is that, somebody will say, well, I stubbed my toe and that, it hurt like hell, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, but I don't want to complain about it because, I see what you're going through, Jaleel, and it can't be no better. It's like, no, 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 stop. That still hurts. It's okay that it still hurts. Regardless of what I'm going through, it's okay for you to have your moment. to say that this hurts.
Mm-hmm.
What you don't say is, yeah, 3 years ago I stubbed my toe and it still hurts and blah blah blah. I could never walk. The way I gotta get me a walking cane now. And it's like, but there's nothing wrong with it. Yeah, but it happened 3 years ago and I still feel. It's like that's you wallowing in the land.
Mm-hmm.
That's different. It's okay to say, I'm not feeling good today. It's okay to say, I'm having a bad day. Like those things happen to everybody. And the idea that I'm supposed to keep it in because somebody had it worse is ridiculous. It's okay. And people who care about you and love you should and will give you the space to be able to express that. And then say, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting thing that we as humans do try to sometimes diminish our own pain because we know that people have had it worse. I guess it's a way of like coping, some
Yeah.
sort of unhealthy, I would say, coping mechanism. And what was I just going to ask you there? Something. Oh yeah, I think that there would be. This is just me. Making assumptions and guessing based on my own life's experience. I would want that for you. That's why I was asking. I would hope you get the chance to do it, just because I think that there would be, as long as it doesn't go bad, which I imagine if
No,
it does.
I don't think it would go bad.
Yeah, I would think there would be tremendous healing in that. Like in the journey that you've been on, there was probably be an amazing release
Yeah.
that you could get through that conversation. So,
Yeah. And, I want to say something too, because, like you said, you had a brother who had cerebral palsy and the empathy you find. I think that like what ends up happening is when you have people who come into your life, especially folks who never really dealt with people living with challenges, regardless of what the challenges is. There's a lot of things that we don't notice until we're in those situations. And so for me, I have friends who, if they've never dealt with someone with a mobility disability in the sense of needing a wheelchair or something like that, you don't notice a lot of little things that we all take for granted. It's like, why are you pushing like this? Don't you see that the sidewalk is a little slanted? And it's like, and so it means I'm fighting against going into the street all the time. And it's very slight, but the reason why it's done like that is so that when rainwater, when it rains, the water can flush off into the street. Okay. There's a purpose behind it, but it does make things a little bit more difficult. So you'll see some people who are in wheelchairs driving the street. Why? Because it's easier. It doesn't take as much toll and maneuverability in order to do that. You start noticing doorways aren't wide enough. There's a lot of little things that you start looking at that you don't realize. And I'm pretty sure you've done it yourself now, in relations to your brother. There's a lot of little things that you notice, and so you're more aware, and it makes it easier for you to kind of like be more proactive in relations to certain aspects of what when you go out or when you do certain things with him. You become a lot more proactive in relations to making sure things are right.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I probably do less of that just because he's my older brother,
Right.
and like, I guess as a kid, you don't realize like that it's that much different, It's
Right.
not like I did it because I was just like super aware person. I'm just like, it's my brother, what I mean?
Yeah.
It just wasn't really that much different to me. So
Yeah, but that's the beauty of it, is you don't notice and you just go with it. And like, that's again, some of those things that I had to get over myself. Like I said, I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. The idea of people wanting you to be around. But the thing is you look at, from my perspective, is that you don't want to be a burden.
yeah.
And so you want to do it, but you don't want to be a burden. And you're not a burden if they're asking you to come out. They know what they have to deal with. They know they're going to have to help you with something. They're okay with helping you with that something.
Yeah, absolutely. And they may not even look at that as like a something different. It's like no different than picking up a bag. Or,
Exactly. It's just what has to be done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I have people who did that. It's like, yo, Lil, you coming through to the party? You coming to the party, right? Yeah. And then it's like they're throwing, then they're dragging me up 3 flights of stairs to make sure that I'm able to be at the party.
Yeah.
And they don't complain about it. They don't, what I mean? But in my mind and my subconscious is like, man, this is too much. Am I asking too much? Is this too much for them? It's like they never even thought about it from that perspective. It's just what has to be done.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've had so many amazing people, like I said, we don't care. You know, it's like you're my brother and I got you.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. That's yeah, exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
No different. It was almost be confusing for me to picture it any other way. Like whatever way that internally you or, even my brother probably, I'm sure he feels the same way. It's like I'm not him or you, so it's hard to,
Yeah.
really relate. So yeah, that's a lot. Damn, I had so many questions that I want to ask you. It all gets jumbled up
It's all
at the
good.
cousins part. We said so much. I'm sorry.
Uh,
This doesn't. This
no,
doesn't.
it's okay.
This doesn't happen that much. Something about you. Oh yeah, I remember now. Um, I left this part out in the intro. I love when I do that, but it's so embarrassing. I left this part out in the intro, but I know that you speak for. You're an advocate for a specific group,
So, um,
or should I say, are you an advocate? Because I thought that you.
well, so here's the thing. Like, so we have a, so there's two things that are going on right now. The first thing is just like right before COVID, became part of a group called Will Family,
Okay.
and we came together to support a young man who was injured through gun violence and paralyzed. And we've kept that going. And so we're a support group for other folks who've been injured in some way through gun violence. Don't necessarily have to be disabled, from it, but it just gives, it's a support group of guys who are just kind of like trying to keep the positive aspect of things, and supporting when we're having our moments. If we have questions, if we can help each other out in whatever way. It's more or less an open group. We do it on WhatsApp and we go from there, and just, doing our best to kind of support, because there's really not any, I mean, I guess there are some support groups, but for what we do here in, out in Philly, this is what we do. But we've got members, within a tri-state area. We had a guy who reached out from Alabama at one point in time. So we're an open group, and we just, like I said, we just try to be there as much as possible for other people who can use it. And some people might be for a moment. Some people might stay for a longer period of time. The flip side of that too is, I transitioned from, I still do photography, but it's not my full time, to now being I'm a trauma victim advocate, in Philly
Okay.
at Temple Hospital. So, we deal primarily with folks who come in through violent crime, and we support the families and the patients as much as possible to try to take as much weight as possible off of a very heavy situation. And as my awesome boss says, it's like we're a big hug. And so, it's an interesting transition. I love what I do. I have an amazing team of people that I work for, and with, who show up for people when they're having their worst possible day, a lot of times. And so, part of the reason why I even did it was because I felt as though that I could do some good. And I like to hope to think that I am. I've heard good things, but sometimes you're never really quite sure. But I think I'm doing some good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I never even been there, but I know it because you're just a positive person. So, like anyone that's been, like I could have used anyone and some sort of help either because I basically did it on my own too. And again, it's relatively speaking, a traumatic event. All I had was my mom one day saying like, boy, get up your ass up out that bed. And
Yeah,
I just remember the sound of her saying that. I'm like, man, something's not right here. Let me get up. But she motivated me. But it's hard because I love that there's a group for people, an advocacy group, because it's imperative, it's needed because I'm sure you've had these times where you speak to people that they're listening to you and they hear you, but you know that they can't fully understand. They can't really fathom what it feels like. So it just helps to have someone that you're connected to this person because you know what it's like.
right.
You know what it feels like, and there's just there's literally like an energy that you can feel between these people when that they've experienced it.
Absolutely. But what we fail to realize too is that people have to be ready. You know, simply having something traumatic happen in your life doesn't make you ready. And there's some people who have never gotten over their circumstances, you know, and so they carry that with them, like, you know, they carry it heavy, you know what I mean? Like there's no getting around, no matter what good happens, they're just not happy, you know, and so you have to be ready in the sense of saying that this doesn't have to be my life, in the sense of things are over. You know what I mean? I like to look at it as, you know, life 2.0 for some people. Because things could very much so have been different. And that doesn't mean it's going to be easy right off the rip. Because you're going to have people who are going to be going through a lot of things, especially if you don't have the support. One of my issues is housing for people. You know, not everybody dies from gun violence. And when you have a traumatic event in your life that happens, that puts you in a situation where you're not whole, you still have to live. But if you live on a third floor and now, you know, you can no longer walk, or you have difficulties walking, living on the third floor without an elevator becomes, you know, you might as well live on the side of a mountain.
Yeah.
And so those are some of the things that, you know, I think people fail to realize, that there's a lot of complexity that goes into living and navigating a world that kind of, you know, almost doesn't see you sometimes. You know, for people with living with disabilities, they're way below the poverty line. So, but they don't get the same benefits that senior citizens get with the discounts and things like that. You know, so it costs you more to be poor, and it costs you even more to be poor and disabled.
Why is that? Do you have any, like, why is that?
You're limited because, first of all, we don't have universal health care here in this country. And so the first thing that you worry about when you try to do anything is whether or not I have to deal with losing my health care, right? And then so if you're on benefits, there's a limit on how much money you can make at a given time.
Yeah.
Well, that limit is so low that you can't save up for anything.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And then let you be $1 over something that they want to take 5 from you, or take you off those programs as if somehow now you don't need it, without realizing that it costs. And this is why I try to explain to people, it's like, even when it comes to welfare, not everybody wants to be on welfare, but you don't realize what happens when you try to get away from it, because you still got to live, or it's not enough to help supplement everything else you got going on. But they penalize you for every little thing. Oh, you work too much. If I work, now that I work, you know, my Social Security is gone, my food stamps are gone, my health benefits are gone. Now, luckily, I work for a hospital, so that, you know, my health care was, you know, was implemented right away. But man, I mean, you imagine when your life is dependent on healthcare, you know, your medical supplies are dependent, like trying to make that move is crazy. I met a guy when I went to London. I had met a guy who used to work at the airport, and he transitioned to a different position because he didn't have to worry about being tied to whether or not his health care was going to be taken away, or, you know, he couldn't go to the doctors if he needed to. So it was easy for him to make those transitions. And so when you don't have to worry about those types of things, it makes things infinitely easier. It's the same idea, like I said, when, you know, you talk about the idea of even arts and things, it makes things easier when you don't have to worry about so many other things, like surviving. Then you have time to put your energy into art. You have time to put your energy into writing. You have time to put but a lot of us don't. And I think this is also why so many people are so angry right now, because we don't have time for anything. Don't have time for children. We don't have time for family. We don't have time for friends. Only, you know, we can barely afford anything. So we can't even go out to just enjoy ourselves. This is why I said, even going to the beach costs you money. You can't even just walk on the sand now.
Yeah, you're right about that. That is insane. Like, they own the beach too. Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah. You're right about that. It's interesting that the system is shit, basically, and it almost incentivizes people to stay on it, because, like, I know, people that have been on it. It's like, yeah, if you make $3 more, it's over. Like, well, I guess I'm not going to make that $3 more, since
Right.
this is how it works. Yeah, that's very unfortunate.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, like there's like a whole thing where you have folks with disabilities and various degrees of disability. They pay pennies on a dollar, 25 cents on every dollar because they can only make but so much. And then what's
Hmm.
crazy is you'll have a company like Walmart or some bigger companies. They don't even pay enough, and people are still on benefits. And it's like you don't ask yourself why is this. And so like, again, I say if you think it's bad for people who have no disability, imagine what it's like for people who do have a disability. And going with that mindset of I didn't want to be a burden, this is how a lot of us feel. It's not even whether or not we are burdens. It's just the idea that we want to live and we want to do things that we feel as though we're capable of doing. We want to be able to do something. And not all of us are afforded those things. I mean, how brother, like, I'm like looking at getting new tires for my wheelchair. And it's like, for the tires that I have on my chair right now, for me to go buy them, it's like almost over $100 just for tires.
Yeah.
They're basically bike tires,
Damn, that's like a car tire.
just a car tire.
Damn.
You know, brakes on the chair like $80. Now, if my insurance is not paying for that, that's money out of my pocket.
Hmm.
And for some people, I guess they could afford that. Not everybody. The wheelchair that I want to get, $6,000. And if they're not willing, if insurance is not willing to help me out, that's a huge amount of money that I have to spend on my mobility.
Is there anybody out there like on the hill advocating for groups? Like
I'm
anyone
sure that
speaking? Like I feel like you got a good voice right
yeah,
now.
I'm
Like,
sure there are. I mean, I'm not a rebel rouser in that light, but I know of the issues. You
hmm.
know what I mean? And everybody's different. But there are some groups that have been advocating. I mean, this is the reason why we have curb cuts, everywhere, without people realizing the convenience of a curb cut. Having wider bathroom doors and certain things being accessible. The thing that we fail to realize is that we all, first of all, we all get old, we all age, and with age comes, you know, issues with mobility. So why would you not want things to be easier as you age so that, you can still continue to live life? At any given time, any one of us could be in the same situation through
Hmm.
no fault of our own. A car accident, motorcycle accident, a diving accident, any number of things, some type of debilitating disease.
Hmm.
Anything could happen at any given time to anybody. Why wouldn't you want things put in place that makes things just infinitely easier to continue to be able to make, your life better? It's not to say that everything's going to be the same. And I recognize that there's some compromises that I have to make. And I'm okay with certain compromises for sure. But it doesn't mean that we have to make things more difficult or we can't find better solutions to the things that we do have in place. And there's better solutions. We know there are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I heard you speak to something that I experienced myself, which is how an accident or an incident impacts not just you, but the people around you and the toll that it takes on your family. Can you speak to that at all? Because I know a lot of people, for whatever reason, we as humans, we see ourselves as like impervious or like we can't get hurt or we like what you were just describing, like we can't be there, but you absolutely can, and chances are anything can happen at any moment. Something can happen to me today on the way out of
Right.
here. But we just, for whatever reason, we don't see ourselves that way. We can't see ourselves that way. So we can't see the full scope of how it impacts not just you, but those around you and how that weight is. Like for me personally, I chose to never ride a bike again simply because I'm like, it's not just about me. I literally felt a bit selfish because I know it's like, all right, well, someone's going to have to help me forever just because I want to ride a motorcycle. That don't seem right. Like my mom's going
Yeah.
to change her life because I want to ride a bike. That don't seem right. She helped me as much as she possibly could without, she didn't even want me to get the bike. You know what I
Right.
mean? So can you speak to that at all?
Um,
Or what your experience was like or how that is for others?
Again, this is not the norm. Let's be honest about that, right? That's the first thing. This is not the norm. But humans, for as time immemorial, for as long as we can recall, have always taken care of those who have been infirmed in some form or another. However, I think there's a lot of things that we don't think about until we're in those situations. And we can look at it from, even from a political standpoint. No one cares about something until it affects them. And then all of a sudden they make an issue out of it. And if they have a big enough voice, they can then make a bigger issue out of it. But that's not everybody, you know. And in a certain way, that's okay. But again, there's a lot of things that we just take for granted. We don't recognize, you know, the full scope of it because we just live our lives, hoping that those things never happen to us, hoping that we never have to deal with those things. It's the same thing like with me. I got the use of my hands, and it could have been a situation where if it was higher up, I could have been dead, or I could have been, quadriplegic, or,
Yeah.
different levels of paraplegic. Any number of things could have just happened. I was 8 years old when this happened. So, and I was tiny. I mean, I'm still short. So I don't know what can be done that's different for somebody to recognize when, you know, people are different. I just do my best to try to treat people the way I want to be treated. And at the end of the day, I think that should be the golden rule. Treat people as you would want to be treated in life. And because you just never know when it might be you. It could be your kid. It could be, it could be one of your, somebody that you love. And like I said, it's unfortunate that we wait until something happens to somebody else for us to find that empathy and sympathy to be there for people, or to at least have some type of compassion for what they're going through, and to make things a little easier, not harder. And I get it, because sometimes it can be difficult taking yourself out of yourself to kind of like see what it's like for somebody else. And often I think that's what we need to do a little bit more of.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned myself that I actually wasn't always bit because, my brother, but I wouldn't say I was always no, I was definitely not emotional at all. Turned off completely. And empathetic, to an extent, but you realize that it can be learned. Like, you can learn empathy over the course of your life, and you should. And if you have zero empathy, the chances that you're going to have any empathy for someone in a situation that's not like one that you've ever been in is like zero.
Yeah.
And you're
No.
going to have that pull yourself up by your bootstrap kind of mentality where it's like, come on, man. It's like,
Yeah, and
that's
this,
like a fallacy. It's not even a
no,
thing. It's
it's
just
not.
words.
It's words, and
Yeah.
physically you can't pull yourself up by the bootstraps. And then what if you have no boots, and what if you have no straps for those boots?
Yeah.
And it's true, and this is for a lot of people, not just it's a lot of people, and so this is why we ought to figure out how we can help each other. And far too often we've gotten into this main character syndrome. It's got to be about me, 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 me. And if it's not about me, then it's just not relevant. And there's some things you got to be willing to, take a sacrifice and take a hit on for the greater good. And too many of us don't understand that nowadays. But I think there's also kind of culturally in America. They said there's a lot of rugged individualism for everybody, and then, socialism, for those who already have, which I'd never understood. Like, it's like, if you're on the bottom, that's where you deserve to be, because you didn't work hard enough. But there's a lot of people who work very hard to get to where they are, and that was like one of the things that I dealt with at one point in time, to feel like I've worked so hard and to have so little to show for it, from a financial standpoint. And one of my friends have reminded me, it's just like, well, you may not feel as though you are in a financial abundance. You are in an abundance of amazing people who show up for you. And it's something to be said. I don't have a lot of money, but I have a lot of people who would make sure that I'm not starving. Who go out their way to make sure I'm included, who go out their way to make sure that I'm happy. And sometimes the things that I want don't come the way I want. I gotta accept them for what they are. I wish I had a better relationship with my dad in the grand scheme of things, but that's a me thing. You know, it doesn't mean that I have a bad relationship with him. It's just I have an idealized version of what I want in my head that he may not be capable of. But that doesn't mean that he's never given me anything. He's never been there for me, in an odd way. Like, I'm independent because of him and my mom. My mom, because, she said, and I quote, "I'm not going to have no lazy son in a wheelchair." And so she went out her way to make sure that I still completed tasks and did things. And she was hard on me because she knew. I learned to push myself because my dad came up to the hospital one day, and him and my brother came up, and you know, he had brought me some chips. And he says, "You want these chips?" It's like, "Yeah." He says, "All right, come on." He says, "Well, I need somebody to push me." He says, like, "No, you're gonna push yourself." He says, "Well, I can't." He says, "Well, you know, people aren't always going to push you, so you need to learn how to push yourself." And I started pushing myself that day and never stopped since then. That's what I said. There's a certain amount of, doing too much for yourself that can be detrimental. It's okay to let people help you.
Yeah.
People want to help you, and it's okay to let people be there for you, even if you don't always necessarily need the help. Sometimes it's about giving that joy to somebody else, to feel that sense of accomplishment, that sense of community for somebody else. There's times I'm getting my wheelchair in my car, I don't need the help, but people offer the help, and sometimes I'll just say, "Yeah, I can use the help," because sometimes I can use the help, but sometimes it's for them to feel like that because they've never had that experience. It's how many people, "Oh wow, you drive?" "Yeah, I drive." It's the same idea of people looking at my work. "You took all these photos?" "Yeah," because you don't expect somebody in my circumstance to be able to see the way I see, to be able to do the art that I do, to be able to create the way I create, and then also to be able to live the way I live. But that doesn't mean that I don't fail. That doesn't mean that I don't have issues. You know how many times I've had to take a, photo before I got it to where I needed to be at, where I can see what I want to see and capture. How many times I've had to shoot it before it's just like, oh, okay, there we go. Or I didn't realize it was as good as it was until I got home. Like, oh man, I'm so glad I got this photo. You know, it's a journey. Life is a journey, and you have to be open and willing to continue to grow it. If you stay still or stay in your last best thing, and nothing ever good comes from it. You know?
Yeah, finding that balance, absolutely. See, this is so interesting. And I guess it's just because I imagine it has something to do with why we connected because, I don't know, just the way I just see things is slightly different maybe than other people or what's unique to me maybe. So I assumed that you were driving. Like, I just assumed you were driving. And I thought that, like, I wouldn't assume that you don't take amazing pictures because you're wheelchair bound. That was my assumption for why you took beautiful pictures because I just assumed like, all right, this guy has a unique perspective through which he sees the world. So it makes sense that, these pictures would be the most captivating shit you've ever seen. So when were you first, just quick jump, when did you first pick up a camera?
I couldn't tell you exactly when, right? But I can tell you that like you started off with like a little point and shoot film camera. I started with film. And then one day, a close family friend that was close to my mom had came over to visit me, and he was just like, "Yo, you like taking pictures?" It's like, "Yeah, but this is all I got. I kind of do like it though." And then he says, "All right, come on, we're going to go for a ride." I was like, "Yeah, okay, we're going to go to my house real quick." So he went to his house and he came out with a bag, camera bag. It had a Canon AE1 program in there and some lenses. And that was the first SLR camera I had. And it was a manual camera, but it was the first big boy camera in my mind that I've ever had. And from there, I never looked back. Now, it was always a hobby because there was always these other things that I did. I went to school first for computers, again, trying to find financial freedom. But the flip side is having opportunity. It's not the willingness, it's having opportunity. I mean, I've been turned down for jobs because of my disability, and I know it. Then I got sick, went back to school for video production. I enjoyed that, art, from the artist. I figured if I got sick again, I could, work from hospital if I needed to, blah, 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 blah. Never got sick from that point, but it was also difficult finding jobs, especially in Philadelphia, dealing with that. And realistically, it was having, somebody open the door, says, "Come on in." But I never, I've had friends that I've gone to school with who had to go outside of Philly in order to find, consistent work, which is unfortunate. I went to Art Institute, you know what I mean? It was a good experience overall, but, it is what it was. And then right when I said, the hell with this, I'm going to go ahead and just invest in me, I got a little PA job, thanks to, my buddy Godfrey up in New York for a week. And I knew what I was going to do with that money. I held on to that money for dear life to buy my first digital SLR camera. And that's what I did. And then as soon as I started doing that, I started getting more jobs doing PA work, production assistant work. But I used that, invested that into photography. So I bet on me, and it worked for, a while, because of the way I had to move in relations to my finances and making sure there was a balance and, all these things. But I wanted also for people to see the world the way I saw the world.
Yeah.
You know, I, and it worked to a certain degree. There's a lot of things I never thought I would get myself into. I didn't want to be a wedding photographer, and here it was. I was shooting weddings with folks. I didn't know what was going to happen. Mike did an interview with me, and that blew up. And from there, me and him started doing speaking, and that turned into other things. And it's just been an amazing adventure. That had I remained in a bitter state, in a state where nothing was possible, or I stayed where whatever my last good thing was, I would have never tried to do anything. I would not have been approachable. I would not have had folks like Mike in my life. Folks, I mean, so many other amazing people who have contributed to me being able to be in these moments, to be able to speak on these things. I don't know. You know what I mean? So yeah, my wheelchair is, my happening to be a paraplegic through to trauma has been a catalyst that has allowed me to live my life a certain way that has then become an inspiration to others who may not have been able to find their light in the journey, through the clouds that they were dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah. So this question I'm going to ask you as someone that advocates for people that have been through traumatic events. So this is like me asking you a question. Do you think you ever get past what happened to you?
No,
No.
no,
Like it's always with you,
it's
right?
always with me.
Yeah.
I wanted to do a series revolved around sex and sexuality and how it relates to people with disabilities.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I took a nice photo myself, basically nude, but I actually, it's very difficult. I had a buddy who said to me, you can't ask people to do what you're unwilling to do yourself in relations to shooting nude. And I was like, God damn it. And so I had an opportunity to shoot something interesting, and I went for it. And I actually liked it. The more I went, because of the status of who I am and, my being, I have insecurities in relation to body image. I think that's, I don't think you even have to have a disability to
Yeah.
have that, but it just feels exacerbated, when you have a disability. But the more I looked at that photo, the more I loved it, because it just was. There was nothing wrong with it. It was. We're all different, and the moment we recognize that and enjoy us for what we are, I think people are better for it. There's always somebody who's going to love something about you. You just have to be willing and open to hear it and accept it. But with that said, when I was trying to pitch it, the hard part is always finding people who are, they say they're down, and then when you follow up, they don't come through for you. But one of the things that I kind of said to some folks who were helping me kind of flesh some things out was that I cannot not get away from what I have to deal with in my life. The first thing I do when I wake up is get in a wheelchair to go do my day to day. I cannot operate without my wheelchair, right? So I wake up in the morning, I got to get up. I go, I get in my wheelchair to go to the bathroom. I get up in the wheelchair to go feed myself. I get in a wheelchair, I have to use my wheelchair to go everywhere I need to go. So there's no getting away from it. And the last thing I need to do, before the next day is get out of my wheelchair to get into bed. So there's nothing I can do to really get away from my circumstances, is the long short of it.
Mm-hmm.
I wake up, like I said, I get out of a wheelchair to go to sleep and I wake up to get back into it. It just is.
Yeah. Yeah. I was wondering myself again, putting it on me because I'm playing like ping pong recently, and I should be left-handed, but I'm still trying to use my right, but the mobility is not quite there. Get my ass kicked by people that I know would typically, I'm probably bust their ass if I'm whole regular, and it just hit me, like the weight of it. And it's just is, you know what I mean? It's forever.
Yeah.
It's just weird that when you think you got a grip on it, it's still there, like it's always gonna be there.
Yeah.
It's always gonna be there.
I mean, it's made me. It's the thing that made me. I'm somewhat defined by it, because it's the one thing people remember about me. I mean, I'm sure it is for other people. It's not seen quite the same way, but it's the easiest thing to remember. Oh, that guy in the wheelchair. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's descriptive.
It's descriptive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's easy. Even in my day to day, at work, I stand out because there's not too many people. You have people who are at the hospital for, to be seen for other things. And they're like, oh, you work here? There's still people. I've been there for a couple of years now. There's still people that don't realize, oh, you work here, because they're not used to seeing folks like me in these types of environments. Again, it's not for the lack of not wanting to have these types of things, but again, some people, it's not the easiest thing.
That's interesting. If I was trying to describe you to someone that may or may not know you, and I was trying to describe your appearance, maybe I would use that as a reference point, but that's probably not where I would start.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe, but you're a nice guy. I think that's where, or at least that's where I would start. It's like, the cool dude, real friendly, jovial, like you got good energy, feel good around you. I met you like 3 seconds. Cool,
Yeah.
I've seen you speak, and it's a nice guy.
Yeah, I try to stay consistent. I mean, I got my asshole moments.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, me too.
know,
Outside of here, I have more of those moments than I do like this.
Yeah,
To be honest, that's why I love this. You just get to talk.
I mean, I have my moments, but this is me. At least I like to think this is me, or this is the version of me that I would like to be if I'm not. And then where I fall short, I reflect and I own my shit. And I think, that's part of that too, is, you got to own your, own what you are, own your mistakes at times.
Yeah, you're true.
Yeah. And I can do better. I mean, it was transitioning from, more or less working for yourself to now working in an environment where your time is no longer yours is difficult at times.
It's interesting, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting,
Mm.
but I think I'm better for it, because our team is so dynamic and so amazing. They make me want to be better, and then when I fall, it's not a wag of the finger as much as like, come on, you got this. You can do better. This is a mistake, but you can do better. I know you can do it. Very supportive.
I like that.
Honestly, I couldn't have asked for a better boss. I couldn't have asked for a better supervisor. And yeah, what I mean? You always have those moments where you're like, but I could not have asked for a more inviting situation with the people that I work for and with than this. Doesn't mean everything is always great, but so supportive. It makes things easier. It makes me want to go the extra mile for patients and their families, because I have something that I want to represent, which is my team, to show that, like, yo, this is what we do. We care. If no one else doesn't care, we care. And this is how we show we care. What can I do for you? How can I be of service? What, blah, blah. If I fell short, I'm sorry that I didn't do as good of a job for you as I should have done. You know what I mean? Humbling yourself even more, in certain situations where it's important that you put your best foot forward. And again, like I said, it doesn't mean that I have not failed and being too cautious sometimes, but it doesn't mean that I haven't learned either. And I still continue to grow and learn and turn myself into a better person, and what that means. And, a lot of times we get into this whole idea with gender, what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. And in general, what does it mean to just be a better person? The idea of masculinity and what it means to be a man is, overrated, at least in here in this country, because depending on where you go in the world, like, men are not bravado. They're look at me, I'm tough.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's like looking, women, look at me, look at my femininity. It's not about that. You're just a person in the grand scheme of things who happens to be male or female or other, but you're a great person
Yeah.
at the end of the day. And I think that's what we all should strive for, is just being good people and being good people to each other.
Yeah. I think when you see now, when you begin to put too much stock into those things, into what a man or a woman is, that's when it becomes the more problematic. It like literally gets
Absolutely.
more toxic when you're trying to,
Define it.
yeah, label it like
Yeah,
that.
you're trying to
Like
label
you
it.
box it into something like it's not. It
No,
can't.
you can't.
It's bigger than
It's
that.
different for everybody.
Yeah.
You've got some men who are feminine and like not, and it's just doesn't take away
Hmm.
from who and what they are in relations to their families and their children or what there's some who are more stoic but again, it doesn't take away. There's some women who are very much so in the same kind of position. Doesn't take away from who and what they are.
Yeah.
And when we look at those things, it makes things a lot easier to deal with when we just take people for who they are, not who we want them to be.
Hmm.
And then I have this thing where, like, even with that, where we have certain types of expectations that we put on people. Some of them are realistic, some of them are unfair, and some are fair expectations. But there are things that we do that we don't realize that we put a lot of weight on people that they may not want.
Oh yeah.
Which is one of the reasons why, like I said, well, when Mike did the interview, part of my fear is I didn't want anybody to put me on a pedestal. I'm not a perfect human being, and I see what happens to people who've been put on a pedestal,
Hmm.
who've made human mistakes or have done shitty things. It doesn't take away from the idea that, that they're infallible, but I don't want that to be the thing where you throw the baby out with the bathwater because I did this one thing that you didn't like.
Yeah.
Or two things that you didn't like, which then basically takes away from any and every good that you possibly could have gotten from anything I've said or done. And that was always a fear. And Mike said, with highs comes lows. We've heard that before, but I don't know why. When he said that to me, it just felt like so much just kind of like, so much just ran off of me. With highs comes lows. And you just prepare for them, you know what I mean? And you smile even when it's hard. And you figure that stuff out, and just realize that even though you feel like you're alone, you're not alone. Sometimes you just got to reach out and just say, hey, I need some help, or I just need somebody to listen to me for a moment. And I guarantee you somebody will show up for you. And sometimes it's the people that you least expect.
Yeah. And just waiting there to help you. You just might have to
Just
reach
waiting
out.
for you. You'd be surprised. And, not everybody who's rooting for your success hits the like button on your social media posts. It's a lot of people who are like, man, I'm so happy to see this. And I get those moments where I get people, it's like, yo, I haven't seen you post in a while. It's like, damn. But that's also a part of the reason why. It's just because of the way social media is built up. It's like, I got to post here, I got to post here, I got to post here, I got to post here. And if I don't post it, and the people think this, blah, 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 and it becomes work within itself. Just the post as opposed to just doing the work. I've got years worth of photos that I probably could post that I just haven't shared. This is not that I'm not shooting. It's just, it feels hollow, if
Hmm.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Not that that's what I want it to be, but it just feels hollow. But I've got amazing things that or things that at least I would like to share. I don't know whether they're amazing. Everybody, art is subjective. So,
Hmm.
but, you know, just amazing things.
Yeah, I like that where your profession where you work at. I like that energy there and that support there is where it's needed most, honestly, because I think if that existed in more aspects of life and society and everywhere out in the field and all different jobs and people would be happier, you know? You
Absolutely.
can go out there and help people and feel supported and feel like you mattered and feel good. They're pouring love into you, so therefore you can go and pour that into other people. Like that's the way it has to be. How could you
Absolutely.
be someone there not being supported and then go out and support others? That doesn't even make any sense.
Mm-mm.
So that's just to hear that you had that because I don't. That's not something that I hear often. From people like the way that you just emphatically described how you enjoy what you do.
Yeah.
I don't hear that from a lot of people. I'm not getting that vibe. I
No.
know they exist, but
Yeah, they do. And it's like I said, I enjoy my photography. I enjoy the idea and the aspects of waiting for that moment, of going there and feeling like I want to capture something. I'm not shooting quite as much right now, but I still keep the camera with me. Looking into investing in some new gear, but I got some other things I got to deal with.
Mhm.
You know, there's a lot of little things that are going on. Like I said, I haven't stopped loving photography. It's just I've transitioned to just something else that I wish I could take photos of, you know, because I find it absolutely beautifully tragic, that I think people need to see that they don't see. But that's just me, you know, and that's just me.
Is that an option in the space that you're in, or just not a
No,
bridge that you wanted to cross yet,
I
or ever?
I, I wish it was in a way, but it my job is not is an extraordinarily heavy job, and it's not for the weak, because when it gets bad, it gets bad,
Hmm.
and not for me, but for the families involved. And so it's hard to be in that moment to say, hey, would you mind if I,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah, I get that.
You know but people don't, people just don't realize just, what we do to each other is just so tragic, man. And like I said, there's somebody who's got to pay for it, and it's not the people you think.
Yeah, I imagine a portrait into those moments though would be extremely powerful. The
Yeah,
moments that obviously you're talking about that no one sees or that you don't experience until you experience it. Like if you could capture that and convey that,
yeah,
infinite value for
yeah,
sure. But
yeah,
I get it in the
yeah.
moments. It's like, what
In
do
a
you
moment,
mean?
it's not. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's just one of those things. Like, you know, um, it's a very heavy job. It's not for the weak, man. And you know, there's times where I don't even know how the hell what the hell am I doing here? And I don't say it from a standpoint of just that I don't deserve to be there, but it's just like, yo, this is a lot for some. This can be a lot. But that's why I said, and this is the flip side, is that I have photography as an outlet too.
Hmm.
And I still game. I still do other things that I'm interested in. But time is the enemy, man, and you don't have a lot of it, unfortunately. And so you make do with what you have, and so you try to treasure as much as you can.
Yeah, there's a thing that even someone, I don't know if it was a therapist, but someone in that field told me that knew that I do. They said to be careful of secondary trauma, I believe they called it.
Hmm.
Like by proxy of just
Yeah,
listening to stories and absorbing them. And never even thought about that. But yeah, it's like, okay, so you just have to find a balance and kind of switch it up and, you know,
yeah. You got to have an outlet.
yeah.
You got to have an outlet because you can. But I mean, again, it's one of those things. Is like I can't take everything home with me. It doesn't mean that some of those stories aren't tragic and you don't kind of relive them. Not from a standpoint of being a trauma a trauma junkie, as much as just like I, you feel for these families, you feel for these folks, and then there's times where I have nothing. There's nothing I could possibly say that's going to make this any better for some people. And then the ones that kill me, that kind of not kill me, but hurt me the most, emotionally, are when you have families who are just so thankful that somebody was there for them. in their time of need, and they're sitting here thanking you at a moment when they are having the worst day of their life. And it's just like, damn, the humanity that comes with that is earth shaking. It just means that we're not lost.
You know what I think that shows right there? We've talked about this earlier before, and someone has said this to me before. Money, material, none of it matters. It's just presence,
Yeah.
right? Just the power of presence.
If you really think about that, it's true. You look at a lot of wealthy folks out here who are not happy with their wealth.
Yeah.
You have people who you say you wish you were, or you wish you had their problems, and there's a lot of people who regret their fame.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not because it didn't bring certain things, but it's just like there's a certain amount of things that you no longer can do because of fame. Your money makes you suspicious of everybody, which doesn't bring you happiness. It just brings you things, or it brings you the idea that you don't have to worry about certain things, which is nice for sure. But how much is too much?
Yeah. Just enough will solve your problems. Too much will kill you,
Yeah.
according to Drake. See, I think that it's, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's by design, societal, they equate money with happiness, and we learn that, or we're getting this messaging early that it means that until you get older, or maybe you touch a little bit of money and you realize, like, man, I got this little bit of money, but I'm still not happy. Once you figure that out, you just realize, oh, that's not it. Like, I had to make me happy. I had to figure out how to make me whole. I had to figure out what I need to do for me and those around me,
Yeah.
those in my vicinity. And it literally, I don't believe it has anything to do with one single dollar. I
No,
don't.
it helps. Don't get me wrong. I won't act like it doesn't help to have a little bit of money.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? But to be able to do things for people without having to think about it. It's like, oh yeah, no, I got you. It's nice to be able to be in that position where you can do things for people without having to worry about it being a financial burden on you just because you wanted to do the right thing by somebody.
Yeah, useful tool.
Yeah, useful tool. But you see it all the time where you've got people who make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, millions of dollars, and they shrink it all down to making, barely six figures to do a job that they love or do something that they're passionate for or about, and again, it goes back to what you said, being present, for people and things in a way that you don't get by just having money that isolates you.
Yeah. I think people were made, I think people feel at their highest and most fulfilled when you're creating something. Like, I think that's why, artists feel so good, and the range of emotions that you feel with creating, because, at the core of who we are, like, creating a human basically is, for a lot of people, it's like the highest, most fulfilled that you feel. And then everything after that, be creating art, just creation. So, there's something about creation that's just, it's what we do.
Yeah,
It's
that's what
when
we
we feel
do.
good.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we'll get there at some point.
Absolutely.
At some point, unfortunately, it might have to come at a cost. But, anything worth having comes at a cost.
Can I ask you one final question?
Sure.
As an artist, I noticed this about artists when I ask artists questions. Sometimes I would sit down with an artist and I wouldn't look at their work at all because I like the conversation to be in the moment, genuine, and I don't want to know anything about you. But I realize artists, because so much of them is in their work, like their work and the artistry is one and the same. So if you sit down with an artist and you don't know anything that they did, it's this is like borderline disrespectful, to them
Right.
sometimes. So I wanted to ask you, like, are you connected to your work in that same way? Like, so say if you post something that you feel amazing about and it isn't received by the public in the same way, does that take something from you or the work? Like,
No.
how do you find that balance?
No. It goes back to a conversation I had with a buddy now. My name, his name Michael Penn.
Okay.
Michael Penn is a photographer out of Philadelphia, and he does time he was doing a couple of different series. And I can't remember how I came across Mike. I think it was an article or something like that, and found out that he lived in Philly. I was like, oh, it was cool. And I reached out to him. He was a cool dude. And we would have these conversations. And Mike is in a different place than me. as a whole. He's just in a different place. And it's interesting talking about art with him. And that goes back to the whole, does the photo make make the story? Does the story make the photo kind of thing? And, we talked about things in relations to, before social media, there were a lot of places where you just posted your photo just because you thought it was cool. And even on social media nowadays, there's still a lot of photos that just aren't great that get a lot of traction. There are world-renowned photographers, world-renowned creatives who have less than 5,000 followers, but they're some of the biggest people you would never know unless you know. Do they care about how many likes they really get, or do they care about making the work? I care more about making the work. If somebody doesn't like it, it's fine. It's not for them. It's not for you. I put it out here because I wanted to share it, not because I was expecting to get praise for it or critique. I mean, if you critique it and it's good critique, I'll take that. That's different. Constructive, criticism is fine.
Yeah.
But if I put stuff out only because I'm expected to make it viral or for it to get 1,000 likes or any of that kind of thing, then why the hell am I doing anything? It's the same thing. So getting back to that conversation, talked about awards. Yeah, I've won awards, but what does that say? Now, do I always go out for awards? No, it was nice. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed that I did that I accomplished that. But it doesn't make my work any better or less than because I didn't win more awards. It's the same idea of being a musician. Do you make the music because you're expected to make, because you want an award? Or do you make the music because this is what you want to put out here into the world? The award doesn't say anything other than somebody recognized you, but it doesn't make your work any better or worse. And there's a lot of people who've done amazing, amazing work who've not won one award, and they don't give 0 F's about it. And it's okay. So it's okay to be anonymous in the sense of doing your best and being your best. This is why you got silly people doing silly things online for the sake of being, like I said, they want to be the main character. They need those likes. They need that validation. This is why I feel like I pull back a little bit because I don't need it. It's nice. Don't get me wrong. It definitely is nice to have somebody recognize, on occasions for sure. But you really don't know what's going to be the next best thing. And you don't want to live based on that last best thing you did, because then that's forever what you're defined by, that last best thing. Most great photographers are really only known for a handful of photos. Most great art, like musicians, are known for a handful of songs.
Yeah, painters and stuff.
Painters, same thing. Unless they're no longer alive, then everything is now valuable in the sense of their work, but it doesn't mean all of it is great. It's just more valuable. And, I mean, you can only imagine what some of the greats had to go through before they even figured out what it was like to, be where they are. How many photos a lot of people had to go through, how many meetings that they had to go through, before they got their big break or before anything kind of like made sense. And it's even worse now in today, because anybody and everybody can pick up something and say, this is what I do. This is great. Don't get me wrong, because I think making art more accessible is always going to be a great thing. Me going out here into the world and picking up a camera and making art, making work, has inspired other folks who are in very similar circumstances to do the same. And so for that, great. But it doesn't mean that everything that I've done was great. And that's okay. I've done some really good work. I've done some stuff that I am extremely proud of. I've done some things that I know no one else has photos of because they're no longer there. It's gone. And it's work that I've missed because I didn't pull the trigger. But it doesn't make me any less of an artist. It doesn't make me any less of a photographer. It doesn't make me any less of anything simply because I didn't have a lot of traction on one image.
Absolutely. I agree. I needed to hear that. I like that. While you were speaking, I was thinking about some of the artists that I respect most and that perform at what I think is the highest level. And I think that removing yourself from the need or care for that validation allows you to create the most authentic work. And those people are creating at what I think is the highest level. And I was thinking about, in the moment, I was just thinking about Denzel Washington,
Yeah,
honestly. Like someone that's not chasing it, but still, just, he's
still
Denzel.
make it.
You know what I mean?
Still making
He's
it.
like an amazing artist and among others, but he's just a person I was thinking about because he speaks in that similar fashion and he lives his life that same way,
Yeah,
whether he gets an award or not. And, a lot of us out here be like, he should win this, this, and this. And he's like, maybe,
maybe.
he's a very humble, full of
It
humility type guy.
doesn't take him not making him not winning an award doesn't take away from him being a great actor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's some amazing musicians who have never played big arenas, but they will fill up a small arena every time somebody shows up. What do you want? The people who actually want to be there, or the people who just said they were there?
Yeah.
Being able to interact with the people who've made you who you are. And some of these people are making very good money doing that.
Seems like the best way and the longest lasting way as well.
Absolutely. But again, too many of us think we have to be the forefront. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. People don't realize there's so many people out here making money who are behind the scenes,
Hmm.
who are making way more money. Producers make a lot of money. Art directors do well. Sound engineers, you know, uh, cinematographers. These are all these people who, like, if you don't realize it, like, it's how the sausage is made. And without any of these people, the sausage doesn't get made or it doesn't quite taste the same. This is why the proliferation of AI is problematic because it's crap. It's taking crap, all of our crap, and put it to use to make crap.
Yeah.
Art comes from someplace, and simply typing a prompt will get you to a point. But if you're not really an artist, what are we doing? It's how we express ourselves. And by taking that, we're allowing something to say this is an expression of us without us ever having to express anything. Don't get me wrong, some of those tools are great as a tool. When I go into Photoshop and I need to remove something, using the AI thing to remove people or remove a certain thing is great, but I'm not asking it to create something where others are asking for it to create something. And then, you hope and pray, but this is problematic.
Creation.
Creation.
And we do that best.
Absolutely. Especially when you feel purpose behind it. This is why you make great stories when writers who make amazing stories through their imagination. And I guess from that standpoint, it's okay to let AI help you kind of flesh some things out, but to let it give you the whole process, I don't think that's good.
Yeah, that doesn't even feel right, because I kind of started recently with all that, and I'm like, this is, I'll use it here and there, but not for the whole.
Yeah.
Something's like wrong with it, like this is not me, even if I made something that was great and was well received, I would feel like a fraud.
Yeah.
I would just be like, that doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Like I didn't cook that meal,
No, no, what's so crazy is like, and it's something I was watching and I seen. It's like we call it AI, but it's really not AI. It's not thinking for itself. It's literally going based on what you're prompted. So it's artificial prompting in a sense that where you need it to do something, so you prompt it to do this.
Mhm.
So it's great for like restructuring my sentence so it comes off a little bit better. There's a place for it. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's a creative tool. I don't know whether it's something that I would embrace. And maybe I'm one of those, look at that cloud. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, but I think that some great work comes from moments that you just don't have an opportunity to capture again. This is one of the things that I love about street work, especially like, especially when you're dealing with things that are happening in a moment. My personal belief when it comes down to street and photojournalistic work is that the moments that are displayed and shown are often unrecreatable. This is why we shoot them. It's because they're uncreatable. You know, like if a
Yeah,
building is
right.
about to be demolished, I can go, and if I have enough time, I can go and take that photo. Another photographer has that time to go take that photo. But what they don't have enough time to do is to take some of the photos that happen in the blink of an eye, and then it's gone. This is why I said I've lost a lot of amazing photos by not taking the photo. And there's a lot of people who've done that. They've lost out on great opportunities by not just taking the opportunity, myself included. And it can be anything in love, life, money, whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just gotta just take the leap, go for it,
Yeah.
and see where it's going to go. And that's what I did with my job. I'm just seeing where it goes. I like to think I'm better for it, you know. And it's afforded me some things. And the only thing it's taken away from me is my time, and that's fine though, because I'm giving to people who need it more.
I love it. I feel like for whatever reason, you just brought that home and closed that out perfectly, like it was meant to be. So thank you so much. Thanks so much for coming out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Jaleel King, street photographer, award winner, trauma victim advocate, and storyteller. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much, sir. Thanks for joining us. Like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Thank
Feel
you.
free to
Appreciate you.
reach out to me on Instagram. I mean, I'm not posting as much, but I do respond, and hopefully I'll get some stuff up. It's also just I'm being lazy too.
Are you active at all with you have a .com?
I do, but I don't update as much. I'm
Okay.
probably going to move over to like a better solution because I use WordPress right now, and it's all on me, and I'm getting tired of having to update everything on the back end.
Yeah, I kind of like it just going to someone's .com page. It just
Yeah, no,
reminds me
the
of like
.com is
myself.
fine.
Yeah.
I think what I want to do is use like one of those site services where all the back end is already kind of done, and then what I'll turn my other service into my storefront. So this way I can sell stuff at my own pace versus giving them a cut of my stuff. So
Yeah,
I'll get it figured out at some point,
absolutely.
but I think I'm gonna, you know, switch that over a little bit. This way I'm not dealing with the craziness of it.
Yeah, appreciate you coming out on Sunday.
No, I appreciate
While
it.
the Eagles play.
Yeah, we got
10.
gotta check that score.
Thank you, sir. You're the man.
No problem.
That was awesome. We'd like to thank you for tuning in to The Awakened Avoidant. We hope our convo has provided you with insight, inspiration, and healing energy. As you go about your week, let's continue to work together to heal ourselves and our community. Stay safe and continue to spread healing vibes wherever you go. Catch a new episode Wednesday weekly on all platforms.
Strawberry vinaigrette in my fridge, made it from scratch. That's